Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. Welcome to One to One. People with disabilities currently comprise 16% of the world's population. What's more, by the year 2050, aging people are expected to make up 17% of the global population. With so many likely to face future challenges with mobility, vision, reduced physical strength, and cognitive understanding, providing them with equal opportunities to participate in daily life will require a huge investment. One of today's guests says that if cities don't start making accessibility for all citizens a priority, they will face a huge crisis in the years to come. Here to discuss what can be done to meet this challenge are Susan Pinkwater, founder of ThrivAbility Ecosystem, a social impact venture that advocates for accessibility for all, and Lennyn Jacob, Disabilities Accommodation Specialist at Hostess Community College and an advisor to a coalition representing almost 10,000 CUNY students with disabilities. Welcome.
Thank you.
Susan, you talk about a pending crisis that cities will have if they don't really step up what they're doing to create accessibility for all. Tell me about that.
Well, trillions of dollars are being spent right now to reinvigorate cities and make them smart and make them new. And not much of that money is being spent to make them accessible. And they're not including people of all abilities in these planning groups to ensure that.
And you've said that what's really needed is that they include plans for accessibilities in all of their infrastructure, budgets, and in their development budgets, for the city. Otherwise, what's going to happen? You're going to have a whole lot of people who are isolated, can't take part in city life?
Well, we have, you talked about the number of people that we have in the aging population and people with physical disabilities, and there's also a huge trend towards urbanization. So people are moving into the cities, and the cities just aren't ready because it isn't in the planning, it isn't in the development to think about accessibility and the amount of people that are coming.
And you also said that if we don't start doing that now, the cost is not going to go down, it's just going to go up. It's just going to be far more expensive in the future.
Yeah.
There are, all of this stems, there are federal requirements for accessibility,
yes.
Correctly? What are they just generally, those requirements?
Well, it's the ADA. So you see it when you see a wider doorway, when you see an accessible bathroom, when you see things like that, but ADA compliance really enables boundaries, and what we need is not just to have a wider doorway, but to have those barriers removed. So you can get from one point of a city to the next side and use the subway system or whatever it is to get there.
Right. And what's the definition? The ADA presumably has a definition of what a disabled person is, right?
No, I think that's
not really
pretty vague.
Okay, okay, so it gives you a lot of leeway. Lennyn, as someone you're a student now, but you've been in New York City for a long time. What are your general observations about how accessible the city is to people with disabilities?
I think by comparison to other places, to smaller places, smaller towns that perhaps don't have as much money and funds to go around, right? It could be looked at as pretty accessible, right? But when you really think about it and you're out there experiencing it, you come across things like the subway system not necessarily being as accessible as you would think. You as a person with disability could board on a particular station because they happen to have an elevator at that station, but realize that you can't get off until a specific station, not the station you intended to attend, but whatever they had that was available. And unfortunately, sometimes you will make it to your station and realize that the elevator's out of order and you're stuck having to navigate that system again.
And then there's so many subway stations that don't have any elevators at all,
Mm-hmm.
Susan, what has New York City been doing or to make the city more accessible? What stands out for you?
Well, there's a lot of discussion. There's, really the development companies and policy have to get involved to set standards, to elevate standards to where they are today. So I saw a big heading on the New York Times where they said they'll make the subways accessible by 2050. But by then, you know, the hard part is you can make things accessible or you can add in accessibility, but if you don't have a financial commitment to that, that also makes sure that everything works and that you maintain it forever, then as you were suggesting, you arrive and the elevator doesn't work, or that accessible thing is no longer accessible.
Yeah, and you've talked about, when we spoke earlier, about a continuum, there needs to be a continuum of accessibility. What do you mean by that?
That if you plan today, I mean, in the ideal world, we're going to include it in our planning, we'll include it, it will be part of the whole process of whoever you hire to build, whoever you're going to work with has to have the same priorities, because it's what we call it is going beyond code. Like, code is not enough. We have code and things, there are loopholes, but things are basically kind of code. And obviously it's not good enough. And in each, because it's New York, but then we have other cities. It's, you know, we're a big country, and then there's Canada right next door, and we have other countries, and code is something different everywhere you go. So in the US, there's basic code that we understand, but again, it's who's compliant and then how compliant. You know, a perfect example would be in a restaurant, the doorway's wide enough to get in, but they found a loophole that if they don't renovate the bathroom, they don't have to make the doorway wider. So you can go to a restaurant and have dinner, or go to an airplane and fly.
But you can't go to the restroom.
For as long as you're there.
Are there other cities that you would point to as doing a better job or a commendable job with this?
In America, I could point to Switzerland.
Okay, let's point to Switzerland.
Well, Lausanne, Switzerland is beautiful. The accessibility is beautiful and the place is beautiful, but it's built with, well, it's been called universal design, but it's really inclusive design. It's design that's invisible. And you can, so there's steps to things, but there are also bridges that are they're part of the decor of the city, of the infrastructure. And you don't notice it, but all of a sudden you'll notice other people using it. And you'll also notice that more people come to the city. So in Lausanne, when I was there, there's all these people there who were adaptive athletes, and they were in active gear. They had different limb abilities, and I finally went up to someone and I was like, "Is there something going on here?" And they're like, "No, we just love it here because we can get to anything. You go on the subway and the elevators work,
right?
And there are auditory cues to where you are, which I didn't know because I wasn't told to know.
In the subway,
when you're riding the train. At one point you hear horses running, and I don't know what it means. It means something to the people who know what it means, because it's invisible. But that's the ideal. And different parts of Switzerland, but it's a rich country, have rebuilt like this.
Okay. You did mention, you've talked about LaGuardia Airport.
Yes.
Which has been, at least one of the terminals has been renovated in recent years. Yeah. And you say that's pretty good, or better than what we had before.
Good. Yeah.
How so?
They worked with an organization that's in Canada called the Rick Hansen Foundation, and they have they're training people to be accessibility engineers and to be accessibility, to do an audit and then to tell you what to do to fix it. So LaGuardia, because they were completely renovating the whole terminal, brought them in from the beginning. Like they did it like everything, our playbook they played. So they brought them in as part of the planning process. And what they did was they put in all the ADA stuff. They went a step beyond, but then they put in all the wayfinding, because when we think about, you hear stuff at the airport, it's very noisy, it's very confusing. People are standing and sitting at different levels. What they hear lower down is different. A sign that we might read, someone else might not be able to read, but they can understand sign language. So they've integrated all the wayfinding that and they help people before they even get there. You can go online, you can kind of look at where you're going to go. It deals with anxiety. It's amazing because it's thinking about it, obviously having included people of all kinds of ability in the process.
One thing I noticed in that terminal is takes a lot longer walk to get to the gates. You know, it seems like you can walk like 2 miles to get to your gate. But do they also tell you, well, you got 1 more minute, 5 more minutes to get to the gate? Is that at that terminal?
I think they do have that. It is new. They do it at Heathrow in London. It's been there forever. And it's like you have 2 hours to walk to this gate because it's far. So I think airports are big. I know in the Detroit airport, they have a tram that's, it's a Delta terminal.
Right.
And they have a tram that takes you maybe 10 gates down, whereas in other airports you're walking that distance.
Right.
So, and there's an elevator that goes up. So I think different airports are getting different pieces.
Right.
But
you have the moving walkways. At
yeah,
some, yeah,
there's two.
right.
And I think LaGuardia's done a very good job.
Okay,
At version
okay.
1.0.
Lennyn, let's talk about your experience at CUNY, because you've been a student at Bronx Community College. You're currently at the School of Professional Studies, and you work at Hostess. How would you rate CUNY in terms of, well, I'll tell you, my sense, having taught at Queens College, is that CUNY really makes an effort to accommodate the needs of students with disabilities or anyone with disabilities. How would you rate it?
That's been my experience as well. I think their effort is, you can say, unparalleled. Students with disabilities come with all kinds of concerns, right? But I think that, and those include navigating college life, balancing academics and personal life, and dealing with feelings of isolation and all that other stuff that they just experience as normal human beings, right? But what I find is that CUNY itself does a really good job at involving students with disabilities in university life, right? So for example,
Go ahead.
no, so for example, they have programs aside from disability offices, which most people know about if you're in CUNY, but they also happen to have programs like CUNY Leads, which stands for Lincoln Employment, Academics, and Disability Services. They have Project Reach, which focuses on students with who are part of the autism spectrum. They currently have CUNY Unlimited, and CUNY Unlimited focuses on assisting students who would not traditionally be eligible to attend college, so that they can have part of the college experience as well.
Do they have it online or what? What would be?
No, it's an in-person program. They show up, they audit classes, they have the full college experience while seeking a meaningful credential versus a college degree. Ideally, thinking about this, I really think that CUNY has been doing a great job.
Then they recently announced a new policy on accessibility that focuses not just on physical accessibility, but on the academic part of being a student. Can you talk about that?
I think, well, it's my opinion, right? But I think that the new accessibility policy at CUNY is really going to make it possible to solidify CUNY, if it hasn't been yet, but it should have been, but solidify them as the prime destination for students with disabilities who are pursuing a college degree while wanting and seeking support as a student with a disability. They have focused a lot, I think, on ensuring that the policy is really clear for both students and staff, and I think that that is wonderful.
And I was looking at some of the elements of that new policy: accessible course materials, assistive technology, a web portal where students who need accessibility can report their concerns and I guess any complaints they have, a 2-week time frame for implementation of disability services, which I assume means that once you express a need for services, they have to give it to you, provide it within 2 weeks. Is that?
I think that, yeah, it pretty much means that they have some time to figure it out versus before where there wasn't a clear time frame.
Yeah. Susan, you have talked about age tech as being a booming business, and that there really is a market, a huge market for accessibility products, if only companies would decide to provide them. Tell me about that.
There's a boom in the market of both assistive tech and age tech, and they cross because it's about safe navigation. It's about being able to live at home. Yeah, I wish corporations would be more involved.
What kind of products, what kind of things are we talking about specifically?
Well, if you think about aging in place, right? Historically, people get older and we have to move them, or they have to move themselves someplace else where it's more accessible and they can get the services they need. and the help they need. And people, boomers don't want to do that. Boomers have been active, they've been athletic, they've been independent, and they don't want to give that up, rightfully. And so the world has to accommodate that. And corporations, who are the ones who marketing created boomers, or the name, it's a demographic. And it was like, the baby, everybody loved boomers because they bought everything. And then they got put aside for millennials and other demographics.
And now we've aged and we're,
right, we're
a
back.
huge market again, right?
And that's my big thing is, guess what? Your favorite group is back. We're back. We're back and we're better. So boomers have, not all, but many of them have more money. Many of them are retiring or have retired, and they want to do stuff. They want to travel. They want to stay in their homes. So if you think about that, so travel has to be accessible. Your furniture has to be accessible. Your building. And any building, any brand that makes products that they once sold to us should rethink those products and go, wow, is this table okay? Can they get around their house? Is it safe? Can they still use their stove? If not, what can they use, and how do we? And sometimes it's a minor adjustment, but it is an adjustment.
You did describe for me a walking stick connected to a phone, AI powered,
Yes.
that will tell you if you've gone too far and tell you exactly where you are.
Yeah. Well, technology
Is that? Can you get that now? I mean, is that something?
Well, you get it on the website, and getting
Okay.
insurance to pay for it is another issue.
Right.
Yeah, artificial intelligence, everybody's talking about it, but a fantastic use for it is it fills in a hole. So you have a lot of information, there's something you don't know. So if you are blind or you're deaf and you're in the world, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know. And the artificial intelligence, when it's not insane, because that's the problem, it can tell you crazy stuff, but it can generally tell you if you have a walking stick and you're crossing the street and your stick is hitting something, it probably knows more or less what you're hitting, unless there's an elephant in the street, and it's not going to know. And there's like driverless technology, or even Waze, right? It's mapped the city, it knows where you are, so it can narrate where are you. You've made a wrong turn because you got disoriented, but it knows where you are. So it can tell you, and it can communicate with your walking stick. So there's in a huge boom of there's Microsoft AI for good. So there's a lot.
So that particular walking stick, that falls under the category of digital accessibility, right? Which is a whole, or not?
No,
No,
it doesn't.
okay.
That's just assistive technology.
Okay.
Digital accessibility is websites, it's trying to use your credit card for something, it's trying to do your banking, it's anything the city might offer to you where you need to get on to get something or give it information, it needs to be accessible to
Okay.
all people.
Lennyn, you are majoring in disability studies. Tell me what that is about, what that prepares you for, why you've chosen that area.
So I chose the area after discovering it. I didn't know it existed, right? I was a student leader for some time, and getting to know more student leaders, I kind of found that the CUNY School of Professional Studies offer that major as a master's degree. They offer disability studies, and they also offer disability services in higher education. I didn't know they also offered a bachelor's in disability studies. So it was kind of something I stumbled into that was a perfect fit for me, right? What I like to explain it as is that it's an opportunity for you to use it to work anywhere, because you're going to encounter people who have disabilities, who have been touched by disability in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through aging, whether it's through life experiences, but you will be able to utilize that to apply that, I think, at any kind of field, any organization, any level.
So it could be at a school, it could be in a government agency, it could be at a corporation, because all of those places have accessibility needs, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if you're working in a corporate company, HR is going to have to figure out what to do with you when you encounter disability needs that they need to figure out how they're going to help you implement. So no matter where you find yourself, you're going to be able to apply it.
Susan, I think we were talking about the New York City subways before, and supposedly has a mission, I think you may have said it, that by 2050, the subways will be totally accessible.
I don't even know about totally accessible.
Will be, will be,
But we're going to be flying
will
by
be,
then.
somewhat, is that, how's that going to happen? I mean, that sounds like a huge undertaking, wildly expensive. Just, what do you think?
I think that's an excellent question. Yeah, like, I don't know if it's even realistic, because by 2050, I don't even know how we're going to be getting across town. The infrastructure of the subway is also kind of crumbling and caving in. So I don't know what comes first. Do you stop the ceiling from coming in, or do you make the doorway work? It's like, that's going to be for them to figure out.
Yeah. And working, any kind of work in subways has always been, I'm thinking about how long it took to build the Second Avenue subway, which is what,
Right.
3 stops?
Yeah.
About
But it's
3.
very pretty.
It is very pretty. It is very pretty. You said in an article that you recently wrote, accessibility, you should be talking about the difference between feeling expected as a person with disabilities and feeling valued.
Yes.
What's the difference? What do you mean?
Well, I think I give you the example of the Sheridan. You show up for a brand, and it's really a corporate question. You always want your employees, but your customers to feel valued. Everyone talks about that. So if you just feel like, if you go shopping and you feel like, oh, there's a door or there's a doorway, so they expected somebody to come in the doorway, okay. But when you come in and they've been instructed to say hello, how are you, to remember your name if you're a good customer, and to make you feel like a valued customer. If you're in a wheelchair, if you need some sort of accessible visit, often you're coming in the back door, you come in by the garbages. It's not, you do not feel valued. You feel somewhat expected because there's a ramp or there's something to get you in. But people have missed the mark. Organizations and cities have missed the mark on that, on how to make people feel valued.
And welcome is really.
And welcome.
Welcome. How did you get into the accessibility business?
It's a funny business. I sort of organically, I have a son who was born 20 years ago, and he's born with one leg. And so we came into the prosthetic world, and then in time he became active and he became an adaptive athlete. ThrivAbility began as the adaptive sports movement, where I was addressing the cost of adaptive sport equipment and the fact that insurance won't cover it. And somehow this, when you talk to one person about this, they're like, oh, but, and this. And there was so much, oh, but, and this. I was like, oh my God, there's a lot more people. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm some of those people.
Yeah.
In 20 years, I'm joining this group. So I realized it's urgent. So I got involved.
And what does ThrivAbility, what does it do?
We have 3 pillars. We have education, which is why I got involved with the World Economic Forum and wrote the article, and I moderated a panel with them. We have innovation, so we're working with these accelerators that are accelerating, which is great, for assistive tech and age tech, and then corporate engagement, because you kind of can't get anything big done unless the corporations get involved.
Lennyn, you have said that CUNY has been trying to do a pretty exemplary job of meeting the needs of students, people with disabilities. Are there more things that you wanted to do? I mean, more things that you would advocate for? And you've also said you think you expect it to become the go-to place for students who have disabilities. What more would you like to see CUNY do?
I think they're doing a really good job. Let me make that clear. I think one thing I love to see them do is a bigger push in marketing when it comes to students with disabilities and the programs and the services and the benefits and everything that's here for them, so that they can see that there's a community here. If you're in CUNY and you happen to have a disability, you know there's a community here because you're already on the inside. But my thought is, what happens to all the New York City people who aren't part of CUNY, who don't know that we have all of these programs and all of these services and all of these great things here for them to become a part of and join our community, right? So what I would love to see is a bigger push in that sense, because I think that, as you mentioned earlier, there's like 16%, students with people with disabilities, right? it's close to 20 when it comes to college students with disabilities, 20%.
Oh, really?
Right. And so it's interesting because at CUNY, we only have the 10,000 students that we mentioned earlier, right? But when you're looking at the numbers, there's about 240,000 plus students at CUNY. So when you're looking percentage comparison, we're not hitting the numbers. And I'm wondering personally, where's those other 40%? So I think that those other 40%, they're either not aware that CUNY offers all these great things, right? Or they're sitting in classrooms 1 or 2 semesters in, not understanding that because they have access to these benefits and to these rights with the new accommodation policy and everything, that they're missing out by not self-disclosing. So.
Right. Well, you know, every day we hear about and read about all kinds of crises that we're either in or that are building up, whether it's the immigration crisis, whether it's global warming. And I appreciate your coming here and tell us about another potential crisis that may be with us if we don't do something about accessibility. I'm afraid we're out of time. I want to thank Susan Pinkwater, founder of ThrivAbility Ecosystem, and Lennyn Jacob, chair of the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, for joining me today. To learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1-to-1 CUNY TV. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.